All right, hello everyone. Welcome to chapter 4, the executive branch or the presidency. Okay, let's get right into this one. Some things that are like the main focus points of this chapter. What are qualifications for the president? Different types of presidents we have throughout history. So both imperial and parallel. A big argument is how powerful the president should be. So it's kind of like the power problem in this chapter. Outside of that, we talk about the executive branch, like who else fills it up. It's not just the president making decisions. We'll talk about the team that they have around them. Okay. Now, you should know both imperial and imperial presidencies. Imperial presidents just refer to presidents that are too strong and powerful for our own good. If we look at a more modern example of this, because your textbook likes to have a bunch of outdated ones, you can look at Donald Trump. If for imperial president, you can look. It's a president that's going to be too weak or cannot govern effectively. An example of that currently or in recent history, Joe Biden would fit that mold. Right here, we actually have George Washington. Little fun facts from history. He actually didn't want to serve as president, neither him or Abraham Lincoln. And in history, we typically consider both of them to be some of the best presidents we have. Fun fact though, his teeth were not made out of wood. He had slave teeth in his mouth. Him and Lincoln both had slaves, and Lincoln even had slaves after he abolished slavery. So just some history that sometimes we tend to ignore, okay? Or maybe not ignore, but doesn't get covered as often. Here's the examples that your textbook gives of imperial and imperial president. I'm not sure if I've mentioned to you guys already. If you have me in class, I definitely have. Your textbook likes to talk about Richard Nixon a lot. The more modern example of him is actually Donald Trump. You can actually compare almost both of their presidencies. They're similar in some sense. Okay, but examples have had us fighting in wars that we did not, as a country, wanted to be involved in. Imperial president, we have Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. Both had dealt with some type of crisis that they couldn't govern or get us out of it effectively. Okay. Presidential power, once again, just arguing how much the president should have. Some people think the president should have more power because the Articles of Confederation failed. The other side of it says we probably should limit that power because we just fought a war against the king. Right? Statutory delegation is pretty important for us to understand because this is a time in American history where we messed up and we gave a president way too much power. That president at the time was George Bush. Congress authorized the president to use all means necessary to end the war on terrorism. What ended up happening is the next 20 years we occupied the Middle East. Okay, so not just George Bush, but Barack Obama, Donald Trump. Okay. Regardless of this, we were also in the Middle East prior. Obviously, in class, I kind of told you guys, like from an outsider perspective, how things actually look. But we will never give a president this much power because it actually leaked over to following presidencies. And George Bush actually didn't have that high of an approval rating until we got into the war in the Middle East. Okay. Presidential power. Okay. The 22nd Amendment. So this amendment is used to actually limit presidential power by limiting them to 2 terms. So presidents serve 2 4-year terms. They do not have to be consecutive. Obviously, we have the example of Donald Trump currently. That second term is known as the lame duck because it's very hard for them to get work done. Okay. Most presidents will get work done in the first 2 years of their term. Or if they are able to serve a whole second term, they usually get work done their first whole term. Okay. Reason for this is strategic. Other 2 branches of the government or the public might start to get fed up with them, so they can strategically wait them out because after that second term, they can no longer serve. And remember, congressmen, senators, they serve 2-year terms and they have unlimited amount of terms. Okay. Some implied powers the president has: firing people that they appoint. So this is when people like to say that Elon Musk and Donald Trump broke up. He's in an appointed position. He can fire him whenever he wants. Executive privilege, sharing information with their cabinet or any information at all with the public. Executive agreements, these are not treaties. Treaties have to be signed by Congress. These are more like handshake agreements. Once again, we see examples of this with Joe Biden going to Ukraine, with Donald Trump visiting Kim Jong-un after calling him the little rocket man. Those are examples. We don't really have treaties with those countries. They're more of like handshake agreements. Now, executive orders, this is used for emergency purposes. So examples that we see, so they're an emergency law. Examples that we have, obviously, more recently, we actually just, one of the newer executive orders came from CDL drivers. Okay, so CDL drivers had to be tested to make sure they could read the signs. Big reason for this, there was a crash in Florida from a CDL driver that was from California. Turns out, or he got his license from California. Turns out he was a legal immigrant and couldn't read the signs. He had flipped a U-turn on the freeway, caused a crash that killed a family of 3. President Trump puts in this emergency law. The reason that we have this is just because legislation can move slow. We talked about that last chapter. So sometimes we need something that moves a little bit quicker. Okay. So the president is a little bit different in the sense that not only do they have a role within our government, they also serve as our mascot. Okay, they're our most visible leader. Okay, so they represent us in PR purposes. Okay, in other countries like the UK, they have the royal family, which doesn't hold any role at all within government. They just kind of go around and give good PR for the country. Okay, our president has to have a role within our government, but then also has to be good in the public's eye as well. It's also worth noting that this person has to represent the country. Okay, so when other people think of the United States, they'll look at our president, and that person is kind of a direct reflection of our democracy. Okay, obviously the last couple of choices that we've had, it doesn't really give America the best look. We have a president currently right now where there's audio clippings from 20 years in the past of him saying that he likes to grab girls by the fill in the blank. And then our last president couldn't walk up and down the stairs by himself or complete a full sentence. Okay, so that's just kind of where we've been at the last few presidents. I would say the last time we got some good PR was probably with Barack Obama. Yeah. Now let's keep moving forward. As that being said, not only does the president's job matter for PR purposes, also the way that they handle the country matters as well. So their expertise, their leadership style, all of those skills kind of is what gives us differences between each president. Okay, um, it's worth noting that presidents are going to be good at different things, which is why we have different ways to classify them as either imperial or emperor. Some of them are going to be good at giving speeches. Some of them are not going to have the best PR, but maybe they have an expertise within healthcare. Maybe they have an expertise within national defense, the economy, whatever it is. Everyone manages a little bit different. This is kind of where we see some discrepancies in which people like to support a certain president or say someone's good and then say someone maybe is not that good of a leader. Okay. A couple things that presidents are required to do: inaugural addresses and State of the Union addresses. Okay, inaugural address is just a welcome speech. Okay, it's welcome to the rest, welcoming um, themselves to the country. The rest of the world is kind of tagging along with this too because our presidency matters since we are one of the main powers throughout our world. For America, it matters because not everyone is really too filled in on what the president is doing. So this is a good time for them to introduce themselves and tell their plan on kind of what's to come forth for the next 4 years. Okay. Now the State of the Union addresses, I like to consider those like progress report updates. Okay. Presidents go and they take credit for things that are going good in the nation. Whatever's going bad, they try to discredit, blame it on the person before them. Okay. But it's a way of kind of like highlighting, giving you guys updates and kind of giving us a little bit of a progress report on where we're at as a nation. Okay. Um, Events and circumstances. Okay. These are things that might change presidential power if you have gridlock, something that you should know. It's when you have opposing parties in the legislative branch and as the president. So Republican president, Democrat-led majority, or Democrat president, Republican-led majority. That's gridlock. Typically, it's a lot harder to get work done when that exists. Okay. Currently, we do not have that because we have a Republican president. We actually have a Republican majority in the legislative branch right now. Now, crisis leads to an increased power. Okay, great example of this is George Bush. George Bush's approval rating was very low, 34%, one of the lowest we've seen of all time. Then throughout most of the rest of his term was through 50%. Post 9/11, it went up to 90% because once again we've declared this war on terrorism. People in America were all in their feelings, and we decided that we were going to get revenge against another country. Also, other crises could be economic crises, health crises, any type of situation like that, because we look for the president as that one single leader to kind of lead us through those times. Now, why public opinion matters. Better public support makes it easier for work to get done. When the public is against you, it is very hard for presidents to actually push things forward. Okay. As you can see, most presidents are going to sit in between that 60 to 70% approval rating. These numbers don't always add up to 100 since some people are going to sit in the middle. Okay. And since the president is the most visible figure within our government, every day they're in the news. So whenever they do something good, this number should go up. Whenever they do something bad, this number will go down. Currently, right now, I looked at some numbers recently. Donald Trump is anywhere between 40, I think it was 40 to like 46%. If you look at some polls when it comes to his approval rating. Now, if he goes out and gives us stimulus checks or he does something with the legislation change that most of America likes, guess what happens to this number? It goes up. He gets caught up in another scandal, this number goes down. Okay, so it's just kind of worth noting. Remember, most presidents, they'll kind of sit in that 50, 60% range. Okay. Media, once again, love hate relationship. I think this is just because it deals with their approval rating. Okay. All presidents, they want good propaganda. Okay. They don't want the scandals coming out, that there's cocaine in the White House or their son is a drug addict or those audio clippings we talked about earlier or impeachments or, clips that don't make them look good. Nobody wants that. Okay. Makes them look bad. What they do want is, when they're going out, they're passing supplies, or like if you're Donald Trump, you're shooting supplies like a basketball into a group of hurricane victims. When they're giving speeches, when they're adopting a dog, like Joe Biden did. Um, that's the type of news coverage that you want. Those really feel good stories. That's what makes individuals look better. It also gives them a good public perception. Okay. Now, what does the rest of the president's office kind of consist of? Okay, so the informal name for this is going to be known as the cabinet. These are the people that advise the president. So all these secretaries of state. So the office is going to be the president, vice president, White House staff. Then all of these departments right here. These departments are all seen by by a secretary of state, which is an appointed position. Um, a president is going to be directly consulting with all of these individuals. So whenever some type of issue occurs, say it's a security issue, right? National Security Council should be briefing the president because remember the president doesn't always have knowledge and like an expertise fashion in every single type of issue. So say it's an environmental issue, okay? The Council of Environmental Quality is supposed to step in and kind of fill the president in, and they'll sit down at this table and they talk about issues just so the president is under good supervision. So remember, the president needs to have a good team around them. The vice president, they're going to be working on their little side projects. Once again, you have a good vice president, they should be able to get the work done on their own and kind of fill in like a certain level of expertise in a certain policy area. Now, qualifications: natural born citizen of the United States, have to be at least 35 and have lived in the country for 14 years. People usually don't have an issue with the bottom age limit, it's the top age limit. Um, I typically think what a good age range, maybe we should stop allowing individuals who are above retirement age in the country, which would be 69. Or my fault, like 60 years old to not serve as president. It's very hard to connect with the younger generation when you're that old, okay? I think the sweet spot that we can find is anywhere between like 40 to 50 years old. Now, does that disqualify a lot of individuals? Yes, and it make finding the president even harder, okay? Obviously, based off the qualifications that we have, if we narrow that range, it might actually we might actually end up with the um, worst individuals than we've kind of had within the last few years, okay? Um, Obviously some questions like why natural born, okay? There's always the issue with making sure that we're not being infiltrated by another country, and it wouldn't make sense to allow someone outside the country to lead us. You would want the people to be represented by someone who is from the country. What I really have a problem with is more of this residence requirement. So I can see an argument for maybe not having a natural born citizen. Let's say we had a person who was born in Mexico, okay, but they never grew up there. Born in Mexico, they came across, they were brought across the border, they grew up here in America their whole life. They're 40 years old. They've lived in the country for 40 years. They probably are Americanized. They're a no sabo kid, okay? That person probably has more of an allegiance to America than a 40-year-old that was naturally born in America but lived in China for 20 years of their life, or Russia, who we consider some of our enemies. Technically, the first person would not be eligible to run for president, but that second person would. So I think it's something that's worth noting. Maybe we should change that, but obviously there's security issues with that. I actually think this residency requirement should be a little bit longer than that. However, we have that because a lot of our presidents actually have some type of military experience. Okay, most of our presidents at the time have either served in the military. Most popular branch, by the way, is the Air Force, or they have some political experience. Donald Trump is kind of an anomaly. He's the first individual we see to come in with no political experience at all. So whether you like him or not, he's opened the door for other people like Kanye West and all these other celebrities who think that they can get into politics. When other qualifications, they have to be either Republican or Democrat. You can't run as an independent candidate. Now, or you can run, but you can't win the presidency. Okay, we select president with both the popular vote and with the electoral college. Okay, obviously we had an argument about this. Should the people directly be voting for the president? The other argument is, well, maybe not. Maybe their elected representatives should choose the president for them. Therefore, we have the electoral college. Our elections take place every 4 years when people mainly line up and fill out their ballot at the polls. It is going to be on something we call Super Tuesday. Right? Obviously, before that, though, there's a primary election for both parties. So during the primary election, they kind of weed out potential candidates and they decide as a political party who is going to serve or best represent that party for that upcoming election. Okay. So primaries are used to clear the field of candidates. Usually during this time too, these people will choose a running mate, so someone that will be their vice president alongside with them. Okay, this is a pretty good example. One of the times that in 2020 uh, or 2016, my fault, presidential candidates, potential presidential candidates, you see a lot of big name people: Bernie Sanders, Beto O'Rourke, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Andrew Yang. All these individuals were trying to run for president for the Democrat Party, caused actually a big split within their own party. Okay, at the time, the last three elections, we've actually seen the Republican Party go all in. So this primary election actually was less competitive for the Republican Party. Probably a good reason as to why they won two out of the last three elections. The Democrat Party's had some issues with this. Even with the last election, we had a president who was already in office for their party, and instead of running that guy back for another 4 years, they lost some confidence in him and they decided that Kamala Harris would be best. Okay, it's strategy. So reason why they did that is they felt that well, there's people that have health concerns, and you're not only trying to cater to your own political party, you're also trying to cater towards the people in the middle and trying to get some people from the opposite side to switch votes for you. Okay, this is just an example of the 2012 presidential campaign. Just talks about how the Democrat Party in 2012 didn't have to have a primary election because Barack Obama did a great job his first 4 years. He was well liked by the country and by his peers within his own party. So they just might as well run it back another 4 years. It doesn't make sense to switch that person out. Okay. Now the electoral college continued. Okay. 435 votes come from the congressional so from our Congress, 100 comes from the Senate, 3 from the District of Columbia. Okay, least known and most misunderstood government institution. People don't like it because we've had two elections where the popular vote, so what people actually who they wanted as president, didn't match up with this electoral college. Okay, now party loyalists are chosen for each state. Each state is a winner take all outside of a couple. There's a couple exceptions to the rules. Okay, regardless though. Um, this is how we select the president, okay? And the map looks something like this. You actually need 270 votes to. So how this works, California at the time, this is in 2000, has 54 votes. If most of these districts within the state are blue, which usually they are, all of those 54 votes go to the party loyalists of the Democrat Party. They decide which president to give them to. Since they're party loyalists, they're going to give them to their own party, okay? In Texas, where they have 32, okay, they're going to decide what party loyalists and are going to be the Republicans here. Since they had the most of the districts, they're going to decide which president gets the votes. Obviously, they're going to give it to the Republican Party. So it's winner take all outside of Maine and Nebraska, the only two states where they actually just go based off of the district. So in Maine, there's 4 votes. So if 2 went to the Democrat Party, if 2 districts were blue, the other 2 were red, guess what? 2 go to the Democrat Party, 2 go to the Republican there. So that maybe makes a little bit more sense. Maybe we should have that, and that would seem more fair. Why this maybe doesn't seem as democratic is because we have these winner take all states. In the year 2000, Al Gore actually received more votes than the popular vote. However, George Bush got the 270 electoral college votes that are needed to win. If 270 is not reached, there's a revote. Okay. Other time this happened is actually in 2016. Hillary Clinton got more write-in or not write-in votes, more votes than the popular vote. However, Donald Trump got the electoral college vote win. Okay. This actually makes our smaller states a little bit more popular. Real quick to wrap up this, we have the bureaucracy. You should know all of this. These are the defining characteristics. These are these institutions that actually help the president work a little bit better. So these are your post offices, your military, your education, your police force, okay? Chain of command, there's division of labor, and there's rules. These are all high paying or bureaucrat jobs are going to be government paying jobs, good benefits, jobs that are essential to actually making our society a little bit better, okay? So bureaucracy, even though we don't talk about it for a whole chapter, it is known as technically the fourth branch of the government, and it's kind of something that the president has to oversee, overseeing these departments such as when it comes to funding. Okay? Our current president, okay, you don't need to really know this, but you probably should because it's good general knowledge for you. Donald Trump's 47th president of the United States. His running mate obviously is going to be J.D. Vance, who is most likely going to run for the Republican Party in the next election. Okay, most likely against Gavin Newsom. Okay, who's our governor here in California. He ran in both 2016 and 2020 as well. Won in 2016, didn't win the popular vote, but got the electoral college vote. Got impeached. runs back in 2020, loses to Joe Biden. He's the second president to serve non-consecutive terms. The other one's going to be Grover Cleveland. Some focuses that we've seen in his office during this term: immigration, tariffs, and bureaucratic reform. Doge, Department of Government Efficiency. We've been going and cutting back government some funding and actually looking at where we've maybe been wasting some money. So that concludes the chapter. I'll be putting that chapter 5 video sometime during the week. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying the class still. We have a couple more chapters until we have our first exam, so we'll go over chapter 5, chapter 6. Kind of be out on the lookout for that. You have a few weeks. Work on those quizzes, work on your assignments, and as always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. Appreciate all of you and hope you guys are all doing well.